So this tier list is the way that I view the game right now. Based, obviously I've had the privilege to commentate the Summit of Time. I was at Combo Breaker. Combo Breaker was the second largest Mortal Kombat tournament of all time. So we saw pretty much every character picked at some point in that tournament. Which means we obviously have seen a lot of characters picked in competition. We've seen results with those characters. Near enough everyone that is a competitor has been playing in some kind of tournament around the world, right? So there's been hella locals and regional events and whatnot. But the reason I'm doing this now is because I've obviously been quite against early tier lists. For me, what I've been saying the whole time is from my opinion, my personal cutoff for like being an acceptable time to kind of start talking about this for me. Grand Judge, thank you so much for the 2 months, dude. Welcome back. I appreciate that. Is the fact that now Combo Breaker has happened. The game is well over a month old, and the big thing is it's pro competition time. The characters we saw people going for competitively were characters they believed in and would pick at Combo Breaker. You are not picking a character at Combo Breaker that you don't think you can compete with. So I feel like the results for Combo Breaker and the results for what we saw at the Summit, and taking into account results from the locals that we've seen around the world, I think now is a great time to start talking about it. This is not the be-all, end-all tier list. This is just what I think will be a really solid way of looking at the characters in the game based on results, competitive viability, and representation. Obviously, this could change anytime. The game is exploding quite often, so, new discoveries are being made all the time, but characters are beginning to kind of like settle down a little bit. There was a patch released yesterday that had no real balance changes. There were a few tweaks here and there, but generally speaking, there weren't huge changes. So of course, I think, this is a good time to get one of these out there. So without much more waffling on, let's get things started. Obviously, I think going from top to bottom is a little bit more sensible considering. And I'm going to start off with characters from left to right, I believe are going to be in near enough that order within reason. So from left to right, for me, that's going to be the way it is. So with that in mind, who I think is number one in the game right now, Sonya. I think this goes without saying. I think Sonya is an incredible character in pretty much every way. She has built-in mix-ups, meterless launching combos, huge damage output, true mix-ups that pretty much every character in the game has to hold. She has zoning that is hard to compete with pretty much the majority of the cast. Her anti-airs are great. Her wake-up attacks are amazing. And this is pretty much for Ringmaster, right? That one variation seems to cover everything you could need. Her crushing blows are incredible. And what she does works against every character. I feel like Sonya's game plan is something that every character in the game has to hold. And that is an incredible thing to happen. We've seen Sonya players, obviously we've seen Ikesy in the UK, Scar winning Combo Breaker. There are a nice handful of strong Sonya players. Obviously Dizzy, TT winning Stunfest. This character is winning major events around the world and is clearly a problem character. So for that reason, she is number one. My number two is Jackie Briggs. For a lot of similar reasons. I think Jackie is... the big thing she has going for her is I think Jackie does really well against some of the better characters in the game. I think she has, in my opinion, the best rushdown, whereas Sonya is true just 50-50s, kind of taking her turn one bit at a time. Jackie is just a rushdown monster. She has amazing mids. She's got the best stagger game. She's got meterless cancels. Obviously, again, massive damage output, confirmable damage, clinch into launchers. Crushing blow for the end. But the big thing is obviously Grease Kick is a confirmable launcher. Her jump-ins are incredible. Her anti-air buttons to kind of stop people getting out of her offense are amazing. But a big thing she has going for her is the way that she counters the throw meta of the game. So we all know throws are really strong in this game. They are really powerful. Her ability to tech an opponent's throw and turn it into damage, and at worst, she'll just lose a bar. And that bar regenerates very quickly. So her ability to throw opponents for throwing her, one of which has a crushing blow attached to it, to hit someone with 30% for obviously going a throw for her is so powerful, like really strong. Obviously her crushing blows are really good, dash punches is good, her normals are great. And again, we've seen her do well against the other top tiers in the game, and this character is competitively really successful. Of course, we've got players like Sonic Fox, Happy Pal, really showing why this character is so strong. And for that reason, she is my second in the game right now. Third, I have Garris. These are in my opinion, these are what I think are your top 3 right now. Garris being third for many of the reasons that you've seen, right? He just has so much just scary presence in the game. He has huge damage to confirm into, great buttons, a safe mid that is hard to deal with on Oki. But the scariest thing about Garris, I think, truly is his advantage on knockdown, pretty much regardless of the situation. When Garris hits you with anything, you are holding some pressure, and there is very little you can do about it, which is why you see some of the most successful Garris players, right? We've seen Forever King, Tweedy, Deoxys obviously getting top 8 at Combo Breaker with this character. Omega K in the UK, you know, there are really strong Garris players around, and they have, like, obviously absolute understanding of what makes this character work. The mid-throw mind game on Oki is super strong. His hit confirming potential into huge damage with bed of spikes, his crushing blows, the way Sand Trap really slows down the neutral, and so many characters just straight up cannot play the way they should be able to play at a distance because of the threat of a single special move. It makes him a counter zoner, it makes him terrifying, you can't whiff buttons, it's hard to play neutral against him. And he's one of the few characters in the game that has a unique air normal in the body splash. The body splash is one of the hardest buttons to anti-air when done at a specific range at a specific time. We know that obviously a big part of this game is late anti-air, late anti-cross-up. If a Garris player has jumped at a undesirable time and he decides to last minute go for the body splash, it will change his jump arc and it will be hard for him to get anti-aired at that moment. And if the body splash hits, you're getting hit by a full standing combo from Garris, probably going to lose close to 40% of your life into some kind of Oki situation. He has buttons for days, great range. His fatal blow really just slows down the game. And that's actually something I forgot to say about the other two characters. Having amazing fatal blows is very important in MK11 right now. Through armored reversals, using it as a whiff punish, confirming single hits into unbreakable damage, being able to turn your launches into unbreakable damage. Thank you for the host, Ash Ratcliffe. And these three characters all have that. Garrus' fatal blow completely slows the game down. When he's got that fatal blow, it's like beta Cabal, right? He gets it and you just have to be careful. It's all of a sudden a threat because it's so fast and has such a huge range on it. So for that reason, these are my top 3. But I want to put 5 characters in this tier. These are your top 3. I think there is a gap between these 3 and the next 2 characters I'm about to place here. I don't think it's a huge gap, but there is definitely a gap that kind of separates the 3 of them, in my opinion. I am now going to put Erron Black at number 4. Erron Black is that was the wrong tab. Erron Black is a very strong character. And again, Erron Black has that aspect where he forces the opponent to play the matchup in a way they really don't want to. Erron Black's big thing here is obviously acid, fast mids, neutral tools that are really hard for a lot of the characters to deal with. He has kind of everything you could need, right? And a big thing with these characters that I'm placing in this S tier are they have tools for pretty much every option. The big thing that slows down Erron Black is his wake-ups aren't quite as strong, which of course, Garrus has that 6 frame up too, which makes his flawless block game even scarier. Same thing could be said for Sonya's up too. Jackie maybe not quite to the same degree, but she has a lot of other things to make up for it. Erron Black's wake-ups are not amazing, but he has just the acid, the rifle stance. Built-in mix-ups, they're not really true 50-50s. They definitely can be fuzzied offline, which is something you see a lot, but that's why you see a lot of Erron Black players not really go to the mix-ups offline, because that's not what makes the character strong. The character has amazing hit confirms, safety, And control. Erron Black controls neutral, unlike many other characters in the game. It all boils down to, in my opinion, the acid. The way that he has the option to pretty much just throw the acid on the screen, and all of a sudden the opponent is forced to make a decision. In a lot of ranges, obviously full screen, it's only really the case if he's got the life lead. But if you're about sort of jump distance, sweep distance, maybe a little bit further or closer, you can kind of just throw out acid, and now you've got to worry about scud shot, you know, anti-zoning, anti-airs from full screen. If they jump, you can wreck them for it. If you condition them to not jump, they're standing in acid. You get 20% grabs. You get, you know, blocked safe back twos in the acid. You can bait rolls. You have amazing punishes for them. Meterless launchers. Erron Black has this uncanny ability to just control the screen in a unique way. That makes him very strong, and his neutral is what makes him so strong. Erron Black is a neutral beast, and in my opinion, one of the best characters in the game with a life lead. And again, great crushing blows, which is another huge thing to do with this game. 52 card pickup Erron Black is the only variation you need. Very strong character. And none of these characters so far seem to really have any glaring bad matchups, which is huge. Like, not to say they don't have matchups they have to play a little bit differently, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they have bad matchups. And of course, lest we forget his fatal blow, that 10-frame full screen reactionary button. It is the best reactionary fatal blow in the game. Anyone does a projectile, they jump, they press a button, they do anything at all, you've got that 10-frame fatal blow. And if you mistime it from range, it will come back if it misses. If it's blocked, it does a tremendous amount of damage. Gorog1337, thank you for the Twitch Prime, my friend. I really appreciate that. And that is why I have him there. Now, my final character I will be placing in the S tier is Cassie Cage. Trying to put her after Erron. There we go. I deliberated for a while as to where to put her here. Erected Hamster, thank you for the Twitch Prime, dude. I appreciate that. I think in the future, if these videos, I'll probably turn off notifications because I think it's not quite appropriate for a tier list. But for today, obviously, I appreciate you guys' support, so thank you very much. And I'll leave it on for the rest of this stream anyway. Cassie Cage is my number 5. I think Cassie Cage is, again, one of those characters that just has the neutral. And neutral is so important in this game to be strong and to be able to win at the highest level. You need good neutral in this game, and Cassie Cage has that in spades. She has the low gunshot, or the crouching gunshot. You know, obviously it isn't a low, it's a mid, but it's a crouching gunshot. Could possibly be the single greatest projectile in this game. She moves low to the ground, it knocks the opponent over, it does a decent chunk of chip, it does a nice amount of damage on hit, and of course it is her combo option. You know, she can hit confirm into it very easily off of her incredible mids. Notice I said mids as in plural. She has multiple mid options that are very strong for different ranges and different possibilities. She has an amazing anti-air, which again comes to that neutral control. And obviously she has access to a restand in a game where wake-ups are quite difficult to deal with. You know, dealing with wake-ups in this game can be awkward at times due to the sheer amount of universal wake-up options. And all of a sudden, Cassie has a restand that is also, it is plus. You know, most restands in the game are about between 0 and +4. She does have that off of pretty much any touch. And that truly is kind of all you really need with her. Again, she has decent crushing blows, she has good mind games attached to them, decent damage output. The reason I have Cassie on the lower end of the S tier, though, is she is space dependent when it comes to the screen. Obviously, she doesn't get anything really in the corner in terms of damage, so she is instantly not as threatening when your back is to the wall. To counter this, obviously Cassie players do their best to keep the fight mid-screen, but obviously there's only so much you can do in that regard. You can't force the match to be out of the corner all the time unless you're winning neutral, which this character does quite often. Cassie is probably, I would say, the hardest to play character out of the 5 characters in the S tier, because what she does requires a lot of patience, a lot of discipline, and a lot of ability to condition. You can't really just pick up Cassie and make her work. You kind of have to dedicate to her, really, and you have to be very confident in your ability to condition your opponent, because she doesn't have many, you know, she doesn't have real true standing mix-ups. She doesn't have You know, kind of just crazy overhead lows that some of the other characters have in this tier. But she does have just a straight up control. And if you're confident in your reads, you're confident in your ability to condition and control the neutral, then she can be incredibly difficult to deal with. So now we're going to go down into A tier and below. If it were up to me, this tier list would definitely have an A+ tier, because I think that is definitely necessary. Unfortunately, it doesn't, so I'm just going to put characters that I think are A+ at the first half of this bar. And I will start to kind of shimmy characters around here going from this point onwards, because obviously these A and B is going to start having the majority of the characters in the game present for sure. You can add tiers. I can add more. Can I really? Oh god, what am I doing? How do I do that? I'm confused. How do I do this? I'm going to pause for a second while I let you guys tell me. Click the gear and you can add more tiers. Click the gear. Settings. What is picked? So I'm going to go. Let's make this. God, I don't know. Let's make it white. In fact, no. Let's make the S tier white. And then we can make this A+. And I'm going to make this red. Yeah, there we go, my friends. Thank you for helping me do this thing that I've never done before. I appreciate it. Okay. So, A+, I think, are characters that aren't quite of the level of dominance that S has. And again, you have to remember, we're also looking at competitive results here, right? And these are 5 characters that you see these characters in the higher, in the upper echelon of like every tournament. These are popular characters. These are proven successful competitive picks, and that is why they are here. The first character I'm going to put in A+ tier, in my opinion, is Scorpion. I think Scorpion is incredible. He kind of is another one of those kind of like very complete characters. He obviously has 2 very strong variations in, Searing Rage and Reborn. Obviously, he is one of the characters that doesn't really have to play too many matchups. Teleport is a common threat against the majority of characters in the game, and everyone has to kind of hold that. He has good pokes, great crushing blows, nice amount of counter hits, good combo possibilities, huge damage. But I don't think he quite gets to the same level as the other 5, because a big thing about Scorpion is he is quite unsafe in terms of if you really want to enforce what's strong about the character. Obviously, teleport is a big thing, trying to establish neutral with a spear. If you're against a character that can punish... so teleport is obviously the punishable move, the majority, but a Scorpion that doesn't use teleport isn't a Scorpion that is going to be super scary. The more successful Scorpion players are the ones that really are able to kind of establish the threat, especially in Reborn, right, of the cancel teleport, trying to really keep that a constant threat, especially in 2 out of 3, which we know pro competition is likely to remain by the looks of things. But the big thing about Scorpion is if you do read him, obviously he is prone to being punished quite hard. But, it's a double-edged sword for him. He doesn't have to take those risks. You can keep him very grounded, very stagger heavy. But then if you're playing that way, you're obviously missing out on certain aspects of the character that might otherwise be quite dangerous. But the thing about Scorpion is, he has situations that are quite risk versus reward, but the reward will always match the risk he's taken. And that's a huge thing. A character that has a huge payout to taking a risk and is also punishable, as long as the reward is high enough.
Wrong, Jared. This is not a brutality.
Hang on, 1 second. Let me quickly just look this up. Vital Effects, thank you so much for the £10 donation, man. I appreciate that. Cheers, dude. But that's a huge thing about Scorpion, right? If you're willing to take the risk, your reward is huge. You're going to do like, 40% damage, close to, if you want to spend both bars, sometimes more if you've got the flame buff activated. So a very strong character, very strong character. I am next. I'm just making sure I'm looking at this properly before I move through, because I don't want to jump the gun. And obviously, anyone I place might not stay there permanently. I will be able to kind of shuffle characters around if need be. The next character I'm putting into A+, Baraka. Baraka is absolutely incredible. in this game. I honestly think this is the strongest Baraka has ever been, and we are seeing Baraka players absolutely just clear house in this game, right? We're seeing Tweedy do amazing things, DJT, they really are kind of like the two ones we see the most right now. They obviously both got incredibly far. Just again, to check Combo Breaker results, of course, Tweedy got 3rd place. Baraka was a huge part of that. DJT, Baraka, obviously. And then again, this is another thing I wanted to talk about is obviously representation. We see a lot of the characters we're seeing around get placed in this list so far. You will see in the top 32s, the top 16s of tournaments. They are characters that are proven to work competitively, and Baraka is one of them. He has, again, 2 very good variations. Against characters with low damage output, Bone Picker is terrifying because he has amazing footsies, some of which he plays with a command grab, which is wild. But the big one is Marauder. Marauder is that fundamentally solid Baraka variation where you have safe buttons, incredible strings, good mids, good pokes, and the extended buttons to make neutral jumps scarier. Neutral jumps on reads of grabs and stuff become much more rewarding because the extended buttons make you hit from a longer range or quicker than usual. And of course, again, crushing blows. Baraka just absolutely deletes life bars. This is a character that does practical 50% plus off of crushing blows. If he has fatal blow, which again, he has a great fatal blow, you are looking at 50% a touch. You're looking for gutted into fatal blow for big unbreakawayable damage. What hurts Baraka though is flawless block. He is quite prone to flawless blocks if he's using his better options. And obviously he's safe on everything, which is huge. This is a very safe character, but he is minus. And sometimes most of the time, it's a bit too minus to really go for the kind of like counter poke flawless block mind game that we see a lot of characters be able to get away with. He can't do that as much, but he does incredible damage, great crushing blows, and also Chop Chop. Chop Chop is a incredible move in this game. Chop Chop does huge damage for chip damage and breaking through last breath. It's insane, and it does a lot of chip. So overall, Baraka, an insanely complete character, and again does very good. Sort of very underappreciated projectile, can outzone some of the better zoners in the game under a lot of circumstances. Can sit on a life lead very well. Super strong character is Baraka. So there he is. This is where it gets a little bit odd. There are 2 characters I want to place here. But I'm not sure which is the better one to place in that regard. The characters I'm talking about here are, and I'm going to do it. I'm going to put Centurion next. Centurion, I think, is one of the harder characters in the game to play. I think Centurion, of course, is again another character that is proven to be strong. We saw Centurion players in Big D and of course Dragon. They are the 2 real premier Centurion players. But again, let's look at Combo Breaker. We have Centurion 5th, Centurion 7th, and where is Jinky Dink? Was it a place before? I know he was playing her too. There was a fair few getting around. Obviously, not every character is kept here. Yeah, so Jinky was top 64. It's not quite the placing I thought he would get. But the big thing, of course, is every tournament we're seeing Centurion players. Not necessarily tournaments like Combo Breaker and whatnot, but we are seeing Centurion players. We are seeing Centurion players get top 8, top 16, pretty much every event. And Combo Breaker, which is again the biggest tournament the game has had so far, 2 Centurion players in top 8. But also, not because the character is just that good, but just solid. She is solid as a rock, no pun intended. She has some of the better keep away. The problem with Centurion is that she is countered incredibly hard by Scorpion. At least that's what I heard people saying for the most part, is what I heard on the weekend the most. So she does have that kind of like counter answer, and Scorpion is a very popular character. It's not a matchup that is unwinnable by any means. Obviously, we wouldn't be seeing Centurion players get so far if it was that hard. But the fact that she does have that answer, right? Her zoning is, if she can set up her zoning against characters, then she is a massive headache. She sits on a life lead very well. She obviously does decent damage. For a character that has her long range options, obviously her damage is quite strong considering. But a big thing about Centurion, she does not have to worry about being cornered, and that is huge in this game. The teleport being, again, resource heavy, it is somewhat of it's a get out of jail card, but it's not for free. Being completely immune to being pressured in the corner for the most part is very powerful, especially at the moment when so many characters really play to get you into the corner and kind of push you to that area. Her not having to worry about that is huge, in my opinion. Obviously, the character is very successful competitively. She does take a bit of work. You cannot just pick her up and start doing work with her. You are going to have to put in the time to make her work and figure out the matchups. But she's very rewarding should you do that. So I've got her there at A+. The next character I have, for me, in my opinion, it's one or the other. It's going to be... In fact, I'm going to put them down and we can discuss this because I think this is where they go. I think Cabal and Sub-Zero. I have in either or order. I am leaning more towards Cabal. I think Cabal really is that good. But obviously the thing about Cabal is we do see a lot of Cabal players around. They don't always get very, very far. We're not seeing Cabal players in like top 8s everywhere, but we are seeing them consistently place quite well, and the character is complete. Cabal is a footsie monster, amazing and plentiful crushing blows, an amazing fatal blow. I feel like I'm using the word amazing a lot because it works. But I think Cabal truly is a complete character, and a huge aspect to Cabal, right? He does not have to worry about being flawless blocked because none of his strings have a gap in them. Not a single string Cabal has a gap, which means he doesn't have to worry about being flawless blocked. You can very much commit on block and be safe. All of his strings are safe and gapless. On the flip side, his up 2 is incredible for flawless block counter pokes. If he reads a poke, because again, when you have a character that has everything is safe but minus, if you're not that minus, you have the mind game of an instant flawless block into a reversal. Cabal's up 2 is fast and has a huge hitbox on it, which means that he really gets a lot of reward out of the minus into flawless block reversal mind game, which we are seeing happen a lot in tournament for a huge reward. Cabal is not on the huge damage area outside of the corner or outside of his down to or over, the hook slam crushing blows. But it's enough. He does consistent damage. He has a meterless stun, good for air-to-airs, for whiff punishing, for long-range punishes on specials that otherwise might be safe, which I think is huge. Amazing mids. It's very hard to crouch this character. He does have options of a mix-up in the low hook if he wants to commit to it, but it's unsafe. He doesn't have to, but he can. But a good thing about Cabal is just all those things together, right? Very complete package. But he's lacking the huge damage output of some of the other characters. He doesn't really have much in terms of like the mix-up department. And if he does want to go for some of the low hook mix-ups, he is being unsafe to do so. But he has a lot of utility, does Cabal. A lot of safety, a lot of utility, great crushing blows, a great fatal blow, good pokes as well, good plus frames he can have access to. And for that reason, I have him at A+. Followed closely by Sub-Zero. I know Sub-Zero is a bit of a talking point in the community right now. But again, I think Sub-Zero is one of those characters that is very solid, fundamentally sound. The only problem Sub-Zero has is he doesn't... The thing about Sub-Zero is he has a huge amount of amazing tools, and he is a very popular character. But, as you'll see, not hugely successful competitively. Obviously, then in the top 32 of Combo Breaker, I don't believe there was a single Sub-Zero. I don't believe. Yeah. I'm just double checking before I say that. Yeah, there was not a single Sub-Zero in top 32 of Combo Breaker. Which is why I have him on kind of the lower end of A+ tier. I think Sub-Zero is really strong. Again, he has good utility, good range, good whiff punishing, safety on his strings. But at the highest level, we are seeing players. Wasn't Buffalo in top 32? Where was he? He was Daddy. He was just outside of top 32, just outside of it. Like one match away. But that's what I mean. There are some incredibly powerful Sub-Zero players around. But at the highest level, you do see players react to the overhead. That doesn't automatically make the character less successful, but it is not a true 50-50. But then, of course, when you're looking to react to 50-50s, you'll get grabbed. Obviously, his forward throw is really good. He's got a crushing blow on his back throw. The character has a lot of utility, but his dirt isn't really there, you know? The strongest things about Sub-Zero don't seem to quite match up to that of the characters that I would say are ahead of him in the game right now. But not by much. He is very nearly there. He is nearly there. The big thing that holds Sub-Zero back, again, is safety. His overhead option is fully unsafe if you go for the damage that does more than just a single hit. His low can be made safe, but, you know, Ice Ball is going to get you killed. Slide can get you killed. And when he's point blank, I'm not going to say lack of mids, because he definitely has mid options. His back three is a good mid. It's not a mid, it's a low, but it works at the point blank. The problem with Sub-Zero is longer range mids from kind of the sweep distance. But again, he has down four. He has forward four, which now, again, at the highest level of play, forward four, we're seeing it. We saw it all the time when we saw Buffalo playing. People are reacting to forward four, and they are punishing it. They're not just, you know, not just flawless blocking. They're flawless blocking and reacting. And then they're going for a punish with reversal, right? It is something that works for them. Thin Ice, you're seeing a lot of players not really be able to utilize Thin Ice consistently as much. The most common moves you'll see Sub-Zero use in Thin Ice is the Air Axe, which is really strong because it does a nice amount of damage. And obviously it alters your jump timing, so it gives you some more jumps, which is nice. But you really see players go Thin Ice for just the slide as a primary thing. You know, the Icicle Barrage is somewhat situational. It's not something you see all the time. You know, it's very punishable if it's just done in the neutral. You have to kind of use it on Oki or something like that. And obviously the full screen projectile is all right. It's all right. But the big thing that holds me back from placing Sub-Zero higher is results. You know, there are a lot of Sub-Zero players around, but not a lot of Sub-Zero players always getting to the higher end of competition. Like, we have seen a few examples of it, but if we're going by Combo Breaker, of course, this is a post-Combo Breaker tier list. There weren't many Sub-Zero players out of the top placements. You know, of course, like, getting just outside of top 32 in an 807-man tournament is still very impressive. However, it's not quite at the top level of competition, right? So for that reason, I have Sub-Zero here. And the last character I want to put in A+, in my opinion, is Scarlett. I'm going to put Scarlett on the very bottom end of A+. I think Scarlett is a very fundamentally sound character. We saw King Gambler doing crazy things. Of course, Sonic Fox was able to, reverse 3-0 Samij in top 8 with her. And it's not like they're the only people playing Scarlett. We are seeing Scarlett around in various competitions, and she always seems to do really well. A huge thing about Scarlett is she has flawless block gaps everywhere, but she can cancel those moves into her parry to stop people from doing it. That is mad, because on hit, she can also confirm that into health regeneration. And that's another thing about Scarlett. Her ability to regenerate health is so good in this game. When you are playing slower matches, more focused on decisions you're making, grounded footsie game, she controls neutral very well. With various projectiles, of course, long-range buttons, but her utility of health regeneration, her utility of her fatal blow being so powerful, her hit confirmable buttons, and her answers to one of her weaknesses in flawless blockable gaps, she has a direct answer for that weakness that is very practical, and even if they don't flawless block, you're still safe. You're not whiffing a parry right in their face, because you can come out of it very early. That is really strong for her. Again, a problem Scarlett has is Scorpion is a really bad matchup, and when someone's on her, like, she doesn't have the best answers for when people are right in her face. She's got like fast pokes, but some characters can really chew her up for it. Like, I feel like Scarlett does struggle against extreme rushdown, and I think that does make her a bit on the dangerous side in that regard. I think Scarlett is very strong from jump distance, maybe a little bit closer, and of course full screen. But if you are point blank, that's where she begins to have some issues. But again, she has a parry, so if you make the right read and you're able to squeeze that out, you know, any hit you can turn into health regeneration, which is so good, so good. That on top of, you know, restand in the blood siphon and various full screen options depending on what you need. I think she's just a very strong character, but her counter in Scorpion, who again is a very, very popular character, I think does hold her back quite a lot. Honestly, for me, that's the end of A+. Who I think is just below that. Who I think is just below A+. I'm going to put Jade. I think Jade is very close to being A+. I would put her at the bottom end of A+. In fact, I still might. I think Jade is like so close to dancing on the cusp of A+. Because again, she is very popular, very successful, and really hurts a large amount of characters, right? She sits on a life lead better than a lot of characters in the game. In fact, I think I am. I'm gonna put her at the bottom of A+. It's either the bottom of A+ or the top of A. And I'm not sure which to put there. Because I really think that this is one of the harder ones. Because I'm not quite sure if she's the same as these, but she is so close. It's not half the cast either, by the way. It's 7. That's not half of 25. Basic maths. I'm gonna say top of A. I'm gonna say top of A. I think she is definitely the best of what will be in this bracket. I don't know deep down if I can say that she's quite the same as top 8, as A+. But she's definitely right up here. Like, she is firmly the top of A, because she is really good. Glow in this game is very powerful, of course, we know that for sure, but the way it shuts down a lot of characters, like when she has the life lead and has the space, Glow is such a strong tool. You know, if you have the footsies for her, the projectile game is really strong. Her crushing blows obviously are a lot better than they used to be, to the point that they're pretty much all practical now. Aside from the parry one still seems a little bit iffy, but it's not the end of the world. But that's really good. And again, like, she's successful. A huge thing about Jade is she is clearly a very, very viable character in this game when it comes to tournaments. You wouldn't see Jade so far if not. You know, we saw Big D obviously play Jade on his way to top 8. Katana Prime with Jade. Waz with Jade. The character is popular, and the Jade players are doing really well, and it's a good sign. It's a good sign for her. Overall, she just, the only real downside she has is damage, and even then she has some situational damage that can work, right? Obviously off of her launching crushing blows, she's not too hurt for damage department. But of course, mid-screen, you're not going to hit too many forward 2s. So mid-screen, your damage is quite meager. You're going to be confirming into like Glaive for plus frames, or, you know, Nitro Kick for repositioning or whatever. Obviously in the corner, she gets full meterless launches, which is really useful into good Oki. Obviously her down 2 is an incredible whiff punish. Her whiff punish game generally is really strong. Her back 2 for anti-air. She's got lots of different anti-airs for different ranges. A very neutral heavy character. Quite difficult to play, I feel. But very rewarding, you know, and frustrating. She is hard to play against, I think, in a lot of games. And she doesn't do too badly against a lot of the higher tier characters. That's also a big thing about Jade, is she does go toe-to-toe quite well with a number of the characters up here. When she gets a life lead and can get glow on, a number of these characters kind of just have to hold that, you know. She does well against Scarlett. You know, she has good answers against characters like Baraka. But again, you know, not necessarily all the time. And for that reason, I've got her right at the top of A. So next, I am going to put Kitana. I think Kitana is one of the hardest characters in the game to make work at a competitive level. There is a reason you're only really seeing a couple of Kitana players around. She is quite one-dimensional, but it's a good dimension to be in. But it requires precise play to make work. I think the only reason you're really seeing Samij do so consistently well is when she's played like that, she is really good. Like, thoroughly really good. Because she can be safe, she has decent damage, advancing good mids, which is very important in this game. It makes her, again, her throw mid 50-50 general thing really scary. And her jump game is incredible. You know, she is one of the few characters that can anti-air pretty much every jump in the game with down 3. Max range jump 2. Obviously, she has jump normals much longer reaching than other characters in the game. And she can turn those long range jump normals into safe advancing mids. With decent crushing blows, of course, she can cash out her belly slice at any time. A good fatal blow. Her projectile is okay. It's not really something to write home about, but the big thing about her is just her control of the game, right? If you have a life lead with her, you can truly just set up a brick wall of defense, because if she's trying to chase after someone else, she can jump at longer ranges than they can. The float means you have to second guess. You can turn a float into a successful jump in if they try and anti-air. Perfectly spaced jump-ins are almost impossible to deal with a lot of characters. But again, she requires like intense discipline to have that work, which I think is why you're seeing Samij be the only real player to succeed at that level with her, which is why I have her there. Now we're going to start getting into territory that some of you will disagree with and some of you might not, but that's the nature of this. I want us to discuss things. I want to put, because now we start getting as to kind of like what I would consider the rest of the game, right? And it's hard to really kind of show that off. In fact, I think we may need another B tier to kind of show that. But maybe not. I guess we'll have to wait and see how this develops. I'm going to put... It's one or the other here. Again, this is going to be one or the other. I'm going to put Liu Kang as the next character here in A tier. Liu Kang is one of those characters that I would say is strong, but definitely has flaws. Liu Kang has incredible rushdown, great damage, great crushing blows, amazing projectiles, utility, which is again very strong for him. Like his ability to store crushing blows with bicycle kick and save like a 35% damage combo for any conversion is massive. Obviously, forward 4-3, getting a crushing blow on counter hit means he gets massive corner damage. Of course, fly kick it is in itself a nice move to have, but it has its drawbacks. It is unsafe. And obviously, his rushdown game is his stagger game. His rushdown game is strong, but he's one of the characters of the game that his rushdown game is quite dangerous for him in a lot of situations. If he finishes the string, obviously he's gonna eat damage for it if you make the read. He has answers for it, but again, he has to make the read. He is a very mind game heavy character as Liu Kang. You can autopilot him the way you see a lot of people online, sure, but that's the reason those players aren't doing so well online, is because you want to be constantly like playing with your opponent if you can, right? A very mind game heavy character. But everything he does in his stagger pressure seems to have some kind of answer if your opponent reads it. Which is what I think is something that definitely sets him back. Obviously, he does have some whiffing issues where max range forward 4, the second hit whiffs, and he dies for it. But obviously, his forward 4 is 9 frames, so point blank, it's kind of hard to whiff it. It depends on the spacing. TZZS, thank you so much for the 3 months, man. Welcome back. But of course, like, if he thinks you're going to press a button in the gap, if he thinks you're going to press a button for forward 4, he'll go straight into the low fireball, which is unsafe. He could do low fireball amplified, which is unsafe. If he thinks you're going to do a standing button for the biggest payout on the interrupt on the gap, he can do parry, which could be whiff punished. Which is, again, why I have him at A tier. Mercury Drive, welcome back, dude. Thank you very much for the 3 months. I appreciate that. But a big thing about Liu Kang as well, though, is, again, he's successful in tournaments. Like, there are always Liu Kang players around in the top 16s, in top 32. There are a lot of Liu Kang players doing work, showing that the character can compete. But then when he gets to like the highest level of games, you're seeing players, again, exploit those weaknesses, right? You are seeing them space normals to make them whiff and punishing him for it. They know about the low fireball punish. They know about how to hit, how to hit those max range whiffs, which hurts the character quite a lot. But not enough to make him a bad character by any means. A very solid character still, regardless, in my opinion. Next, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do it because it's what I think. Kung Lao. I'm gonna do it because this is honestly what I think. Kung Lao is next. Kung Lao is a solid character. Kung Lao is a character that does huge damage off of his mids, and I'm talking about Kung Lao in the style that we saw work at Combo Breaker. You know, the style that makes the character be able to do well in tournaments is the real enforcement of mid throw. Because let's think about that for a second. Kung Lao has very practical 30% damage touches, good utility, and decent crushing blows. He is a character that really thrives off of mid or throw, and that is because his mids are not the fastest, but they are definitely not the slowest, and he has a throw of which his back throw gives him throw loops because he gets a meaty down 3, which is plus enough to give him a mid, and his back throw has a crushing blow. That makes his back throw very favorable, which gives him more forward throws because it's the less likely one to tech, which is huge. But should he get escape failed and the risk of a throw is there, his mids become stronger. And his mids are barely minus on block, which means that, again, we saw Foxy do this again at Combo Breaker Top 8. If you're barely minus, there's the extra layer of be barely minus into flawless block up 2. His up 2 is fast and has a huge hitbox into a launch. So he gets a lot more off of that mind game. He has, strong whiff punishes in a counter hit crushing blow on an advancing mid. He has down 3 is the only poke you're going to need. And again, his fatal blow is decent for whiff punishing and confirms, but crushing blows, which aren't bad by any means. And his dive kick crushing blow is scary every time. He can end a combo and dive kick, and then obviously hat tricks can. Right now there is a feature where even though the dive kick crushing blow says you must hit 2 in a row, you can end a combo in a meterless dive kick and then throw as many normal Z hats as you want. And then the next dive kick you hit after the Z hats will still crushing blow. I don't know why, but that's a thing that works. But it means that it's scary because if he throws Z hats, you try and jump the Z hat, he'll anti-air you with a dive kick that will now crushing blow, which is huge. The reason I have Kung Lao down here, because I think he's very powerful. Just watch any of the players in the UK play him that we've seen. There are a fair few strong Kung Lao players around, but the one that you see the most is Foxy, of course. The reason I have him at A tier is because that is a style that is quite live by the sword, die by the sword. Because throws in this game, despite being as strong as they are, have never been more punishing if you miss one. Obviously, missed throws can be turned into most characters' max damage if you have the down 2. A lot of characters have counter hit crushing blows, which will apply to whiffed grabs, or just straight up standing. Everyone's crouching throws now, so everyone's going to be standing buttons into whatever gets them damage if you mess it up, which means that the risk reward is very balanced for Kung Lao. His reward is great, but his risk is great as well. I also believe that Jackie is a hard counter to him, given the fact that she can turn successful throw techs into throws of her own, which is obviously we saw displayed at Combo Breaker, which is huge. But again, that's something that I think really does hold Kung Lao back. but not enough to make him not a good pick. But I think that's the reason why you see, for example, Foxy Grandpa, who again is the Kung Lao player most players will think of when you consider the character right now. Not the only one by any means, but the one you'll think of, especially after Combo Breaker Top 8. Kung Lao is not the only character he plays, right? He still has Cassie, and he will go to Kung Lao for matchups that he thinks the character will really work, which I think is really interesting. Now we're getting into kind of quite shaky territory, really. In fact, I am going to create a B+ tier because I think that is going to be necessary. In fact, I'm going to do the same thing. So I'm going to make, let's make this. I don't think any character is going to be an F. There may be one, but I'm going to make F bright blue, and then I'm going to make everything else one green difference. That's bright green. That's going to be one higher. Wait, oh no, that's not what I want. Is it? No, hang on, what am I doing? Sorry guys, I've forgotten how this works. I've never used this before, so I'm kind of doing it on the fly. Have I not gotten anywhere there? Orange, this, yellow. It's like I haven't actually gotten anywhere. What color did I just change? Oh, screw this. It doesn't matter. I'm just going to make another one. Add row above. And this is going to be B+. And then, because it's in the way and I don't want to do this anymore, I'm going to make it pink. Let's do that. Right. Sorry for the distraction, my friends. But now I'm going to have Jax next to Kung Lao. I think Jax is solid, but doesn't excel in quite enough areas for him to be any better than this. I think and again, remember guys, like this is left to right. This is not these are as good as each other. This is left to right. So Jax is on the lower end of this, in my opinion. Jax has decent mix-ups, but again is very susceptible to flawless block. And outside of Grin and Barrett, obviously his damage is kind of limited to Crushing Blow launch and Command Grab, which again is quite dangerous, especially now. But again, like he has amazing buttons. He has strong utility, you know, good movement, good pokes, amazing mids. But that's pretty much what is good about him is good enough to have him here. But the big thing that sets Jax back, I think, is again like success competitively. We don't see him placing amazingly well in tournaments, and that really does hold them back, because we're not just talking about what a character can do on paper. We're talking about how well they do in tournament, and Jax just isn't quite up there yet. In fact, for that reason, I'm going to put Noob Saibot, who was going to be next. I'm going to put Noob Saibot ahead of Jax. Because, you know, Jax again has good aspects to him for sure, but I don't think he quite has enough to get to that point of competition, you know. And damage output outside of the corner isn't anything to really write home about. I think Grin and Barrett is quite solid. I really think Grin and Barrett is decent, but obviously, you know, he misses the really useful crushing blows of Hunker Down, so it's quite tough to decide what variation to use for Jax, I feel. And the big thing that holds the character back is we're just not seeing him work in tournaments. And that's important. You know, we're seeing a fair few Jax players about, but we're not seeing him succeed. And that is, you know, a huge thing with the character that holds him back, in my opinion. And obviously he's built around the heat mechanic, which he isn't always going to have. When he does have max heat, he's very powerful, but it's a resource you have to build up to. And that takes time. And obviously using crushing blows expends that resource. So it's kind of like, you know, up and down. His fatal blow is amazing though, and obviously gives him max heat, which I think is a huge help. Jax's comeback potential is through the roof thanks to that. Obviously being able to turn a fatal blow into max heat is honestly like 60% waiting to happen if you manage to get a crushing blow straight away, which I think is really good. Noob Saibot I put ahead of Jax. Noob Saibot, I think, is really severely held back by lack of mix-up. But Noob Saibot, he has decent neutral. He's got long-range buttons. He has one of the better mids in the game, a 9-frame hit-confirmable mid that obviously can be used as a restand in combos to get huge extensions. But the big thing that holds Noob Saibot back is pretty much zero mix-up potential at all. And no real staggers. You know, he's one of the few characters in the game that doesn't have a standing overhead, but he doesn't have anything he can delay either. Which I think is a big counter to the way characters like that play. The big thing is, well, obviously Noob Saibot doesn't have staggers that he can really rely on. He does have phenomenal damage output. Practical, phenomenal damage output. He is looking at 40%, 400 damage a touch with combos that you can get. They are practical, they're not difficult. I mean, they can be, they're tricky, but again, if you're maining this character, you should know them. Good utility, again, Fatal Blow is a reactionary full screen tool. He's got decent fireballs. His fireball could be turned into a +5 restand, and he's got long buttons to kind of check you with. But Noob Saibot doesn't have many crushing blows, in the sense that he's got 2 grab ones, which is great. It's definitely good for a character that doesn't have a standing overhead, but obviously throws are not the most reliable thing all the time, but they can work. But throws are really complemented if you have strong staggers or you're like barely minus, which is not always. He has some options for like his 2-1-2, but not quite as much as other characters that I would say have that same drawback. I feel like Noob might get a bit weaker as the game progresses though, because as people's defense gets better, he is going to find it harder and harder and harder to get damage. However, it's not stopping the character from placing well in tournament. Of course, we saw, let's have a look at Noob Saibot. Of course, both Honeybee and Toxin got 17th at Combo Breaker. Obviously, Honeybee defeating Rewind to do it. Toxin, beating a decent amount of strong players. The character is clearly, works in tournament. But again, we're going to have to wait and see how long that remains the case. As I do feel like Noob Saibot will get worse as time goes on and players' general defense gets better. But I don't think that time is yet. Now we look at the rest. So B+, I think, is next. Actually, no, not yet. This is going to be a pick that I think some people will disagree with, and I'm ready to kind of explain why. She's very much on the lower end of this, so she's definitely the bottom of this tier, but I definitely think she's better than the tier above. Frost. I believe in this placement. I really do. I think Frost is one of the more slept on characters right now. We didn't see much of Stabs at Combo Breaker. He only got like one game on stream, I believe. But this character is solid, truly. I think the character is, she kind of has a lot of what you need. She has some of, if not the longest range in the game. So her whiff punish ability is great. Remember, guys, like, this is left to right, so she's definitely at the bottom of this tier list, at this end of the tier, so she's definitely at the bottom of A tier, but she's definitely there. I feel like she's better than B+, for one reason, one big reason here. I think she does really well against some of the other characters in the rest of the tiers here. I think she does well against Kitana. I think she does well against Jade. I think she does well against Scarlett. I think she does well against Cabal. She is one of the premier anti-zoning characters. She has the projectile shield, is so fast on startup, so you can trade with, you can get it up to deny chip really late. You can trade very favorably with anything in the air, like characters like Jade and Cabal that are very air projectile heavy. She can really shut down and keep them grounded. Obviously, again, quick disclaimer, I would consider A tier the tier of like the most balanced in the game. These are the characters that definitely have as many drawbacks as they have, good sides to them. And I think Frost is a good example of that. Frost has incredible range, decent damage, confirmable damage, crushing blows that aren't the hardest things in the world to go for. Obviously, her back 2 crushing blow and her ice drill crushing blow. Her ice drill is harder to set up, but can be done if you manage it properly. Both of those crushing blows give her 40% damage in the corner. She has close to 30% damage confirms mid-screen. She has decent safety. Obviously, the ice, you know, the Beyblade move is only -4, so you can do that after anything to jail into a -4, which is not a bad spot to be in. She has decent plus frames in 1-3-2. Obviously, it can be flawless blocked, but anywhere she has that can be flawless blocked, she can just go into the Beyblade. And if they try and flawless block, they get hit by it. Beyblade has a huge amount of hit advantage on it. And is safe. So she, again, one of her biggest drawbacks is flawless blockable gaps, and she has a safe move to counter those gaps. She has decent projectiles again, decent damage, a very strong fatal blow. Her fatal blow utility is really good, and I think overall it makes her quite a solid pick. Her main drawback though is she obviously has the slowest pokes. In the game, she has the slowest pokes in the game, which is a big problem for her, right? 9 frame down 1, 8 frame down 3. Her down 3 is also a mid, not a low. So against characters that have like mix-ups that you need to kind of do lows for, like for example Liu Kang, it's hard for her to get out of his offense because she doesn't have that fast low to kind of counter a parry. And I think that's a big drawback, but it's a drawback that a character like her needs. But she's got good anti-airs. Her down 3, one of the better anti-air buttons in the game, which I think really helps. I would consider middle of the pack pretty much these 3, by the way, kind of A+ through B+. I would consider those kind of like the real majority, which is why you'll see the most characters here in A. Now I think we move down to B+. At the top of B+ right away, I think it's Kano. I'm not gonna lie. I firmly think this is where Kano should be. Obviously, you guys that have been following, the channel since day one, obviously, you know I don't think Kano is as bad as most of the people have made out in the community. I think the results speak for themselves at this point. Obviously, Cheap Eddie winning a tournament in St. Petersburg. I'm yet to watch the VODs, but I've heard it was a really good showing. But that's not the placement I'm going this off. There were 2 Kano players in the top 17 of Combat Breaker. There were 2 Kano players in the second largest Mortal Kombat tournament of all time. And it wasn't due to matchup unfamiliarity, right? Biohazard and I have very different styles, distinctly different styles, and they both worked. Obviously, neither of us managed to get to the top end of top 8, but Biohazard came damn close. Both of his sets he lost were 2-1, so Biohazard is showing that a more mix-up style Kano can really work when you're really going for your max damage off of like jump kicks if you can. And I was going for more of a kind of like a grounded, whiff punish focused, scarcely going for grabs, more normal grabs, but they both have their drawbacks, but they both have their benefits. Kano has good damage, good footsies. His command grab is one of the better grabs in the game, honestly. Unmarshall, thank you so much for the Twitch Prime, mate. I appreciate that. Thank you. I think he has one of the better command grabs in the game. He has solid damage output, but the good thing about Kano, I think, which is very underrated, is his neutral control. His control of neutral when he has the life lead is so good. He has an amazing projectile, back 2, good whiff punish buttons, and should he decide to get aggressive, he has some solid mix-ups. As far as characters with a high command grab go. The character works competitively, especially if the game stays 2 out of 3. I think if the game stays 2 out of 3, Kano will remain a very solid tournament pick, because in a 2 out of 3 with a character with Kano's mix-up potential, his corner carry, and his Oki game, this character can be scary. And for those reasons together, he is going to be at the top of B+ for me. Diabolical Funk with the 2 months. Welcome back, dude. Thank you very much. So as you can see, we're getting to kind of like what you consider the rest of the pack. I think looking at these characters, the next one is going to be Johnny Cage. I think Johnny Cage has great buttons. The problem with Johnny Cage, and the reason I have him so low, is Johnny Cage's downsides are a problem you will experience in pretty much every match you play. His downsides are, obviously, he has some strange whiffing issues with some of his moves that collide in very odd ways for him. On the flip side, some moves kind of don't hit him very well either. But it's like a double-edged thing. It shouldn't be the case regardless. He's got some very strange hitboxes. And obviously, crushing blows that you're just not going to see. Like, Johnny Cage is, as far as I'm concerned, almost a one crushing blow character, and that's his down 2. His other practical crushing blow is going to be his nut punch, obviously. If you nut punch as a punish, it will launch for more damage. But even then, it's not going to be staggeringly high damage either. And that's a huge downside to have as a character, is obviously you can't use crushing blows, which is a huge part of this game. Which means his damage is kind of limited and meter intensive. He needs offensive bar to do anything at all. He's got decent fireballs, but again, it's too high, so it's kind of hard to see how that's going to work in comparison to a lot of other projectiles in the game. But he's got good range. He's got very strong buttons, great pokes, like amazing pokes, and his damage isn't terrible. But the problem is, I feel like his drawbacks really weigh against his benefits. I don't think he's bad. I think he, again, still has incredible buttons, decent damage output. Again, a restand. It's a restand that means you don't have to deal with wake up game, which means you can really kind of simplify your offense. Decent throw game. And obviously back 2 is universally a good button, which I think is always quite nice. But I've got him here. But again, Johnny Cage, like we saw DJ at Combo Breaker doing all right. Combat, we saw win the online Combat Cup with Johnny Cage. So the character can clearly do well in the hands of a solid player, but he has a lot of problems. Which I think is a shame for him. Next, I'm going to go with... Next, I'm going to go with... I feel like... So this is where it gets a bit difficult. Because I have... I'm gonna just go out and say it right now. I have Devorah at like pretty much C tier. I think she is absolutely trash right now, and I think there is going to be this B tier because I really want to put. This is where it's going to get a little bit different because I would put Shao Kahn one above Devorah. And I would also put Collector there, but above Shao Kahn. So, but the question is, where do these go? Because I do think Raiden is B+. I don't think he's... I'm actually might be more inclined to put Raiden above Johnny Cage. I honestly think I might put Raiden above Johnny Cage. I'm not sure. And I definitely think Shao Kahn belongs in here too. But the question is, what order are all these around? That's the question. Because I think Shao Kahn is solid. But the question is, do I think he's better than Raiden? Because again, we have to go by the fact that Raiden is a character with a lot of problems, but a certain place in the game, because we saw him do work at Combo Breaker, of course, in the hands of combat, but he has some really good matchups, which I don't think is that bad for him. The issue with Raiden is that, again, like his best moves are so dangerous to enforce. Like if you go for Storm Cell, you are just praying that it's gonna work. Storm Cell is under no circumstance something you can go with regularly, because if you do, you will not only die for doing it, you can get crushing blow down too, which is even tougher. But he has really good buttons, good mids. Obviously, his damage is strong if you can hit confirm into a Storm Cell and you confirm. But he's held back by crushing blows again. Like that's one thing that combines all three of these characters here, is that crushing blows are really hard to utilize. And if it weren't for that, they would be considerably better. But again, something about Raiden that is very underrated that I think does put him above Shao Kahn, and honestly maybe above Johnny Cage, is teleport. Teleport is get out of the corner. He does not have to worry about being cornered in a game where corner pressure is terrifying. And if he wants to spend his resources, he can do so without risk, and that is huge. In fact, I think I'm going to do that. I think I'm going to swap Raiden and Johnny Cage, because Johnny Cage has more drawbacks than Raiden. And his success is, again, I think the character's kind of competitive representation is about as scarce as each other, but we did see a fair few, a handful of Johnny Cages doing all right at Combo Breaker. We saw Hero Killer. I mean, how far did Hero Killer get? He got just outside of top 32 with Raiden. We obviously saw Combat with Raiden, which I think was really good for the character. Obviously, Atai getting this far with Katana as well. I always forget to mention Atai when it comes to Katana, and I shouldn't, because he's very strong with the character. The character is seeing, relatively more and more, space in tournaments. It's just irregular, and we're not seeing him quite have that top level of success yet. But I do think Raiden is on the rise. I think as we see more Raiden, he will get better. I think, Rewind was talking at Combo Breaker about maybe going back to Raiden, but as it stands, from what we've seen, and again, remember everyone, we're not talking about what a character is capable of on paper. We're talking about what we see in tournament. That is the big thing here. We're going by what we see in tournament. It doesn't matter what a character can do on paper if we don't see it used in tournament. And that is something that, in my opinion, is currently holding Raiden back. Because we can all sit in training mode and show some cool stuff, but until we see it working in tournament, it may as well not matter, right? That is honestly the main point of this tier list for me. Which is why I've got Raiden there. I think Raiden has, again, decent utility, good damage if you can hit Storm Cell, and, just, again, decent throw game for what it is. Crushing blows are up and down, same as kind of Johnny Cage. Mainly down, but again, you can still see them at times. But that's where we've got Raiden, because the list is about competitive results, what we see in tournament, and just consistency with the character. I feel like what we see from the characters right here is kind of the same, is almost the same level competitive wise. Which is why I think Kano is at the top of this bunch, right? I would honestly say that Kano is like really solid mid character, which is kind of why he's at the top of B+. But not quite on the lower end of A yet, based from what we've seen. I think as we see more from Biohazard, as we see more from him in America, we might see some more of this. If we can see more of Cheap Eddie, that'd be great, which is why I've got Kano up here. Shao Kahn. Now we move on to Shao Kahn, who's the next character I haven't talked about yet. Shao Kahn is... We're pretty much only really seeing Jackal and Rico. Rico hasn't really entered any events yet. But Jackal... Where did Jackal get? Jackal get? Jackal got... here we go. We saw Jackal down here with Shao Kahn. He got out of his pool, but he didn't get to top 32. Unfortunately, he didn't. He got a few stages short of it. And I know Shao Kahn is a character that Sonic Fox obviously rates rather high. But then other Shao Kahn players don't rate him so much. I think Shao Kahn is, again, one of those characters that has a lot of potential, but potential doesn't matter until we see it work in tournaments. Shao Kahn has decent damage. He's got good pokes. He's got a fast mid and forward 3, but that mid itself is not as reliable as others due to it going into a big gap. It's really hard to hit confirm. But we do see, obviously, Jackal wins locals with the character. He did decent at Combo Breaker. But... again, what we think the character is capable of and what we see is different. His crushing blows are really hard to utilize. Obviously, his forward throw has to punish a move as a reversal grab, and it will launch, which again leads into massive damage. But that's quite a situational thing. Is punish something with a forward throw. You can see it, but we don't see it often because there aren't a lot of Shao Kahn players around. Woo wee! Thank you so much for the Twitch Prime sub, dude. Thank you. I appreciate that a lot. Thank you very much. But that, again, Shao Kahn is another one of those characters that we can see the potential in, but I don't know if potential matters as much as what we see happen to the character when push comes to shove. When push comes to shove and Shao Kahn is picked in tournament, he doesn't get super far, at least at Combo Breaker, and we see the odd pocket Shao Kahn every now and then, but again, he just never quite get to that point in competition, which I think really holds him back. For now, at least. So this is where I'm going to put Shao Kahn. Collector, I think, is really limited. I only know what I've seen from back in the pack. I haven't really seen much of the second variation. Collector is another character that I know Nivek was talking at Common Break about. You know, he thinks Collector is quite good. But again, we're yet to see the character do anything competitively, and that really holds him back. Obviously, you know, some of the other more prominent Collector players dropped the character and have pretty much abandoned him. I don't doubt there are Collector players out there still playing him, you know, trying to find some cool stuff and showing him off, but we've not seen it yet. And again, that's a huge thing that's holding the character back, is if this character has some cool stuff, we're not seeing it. So we've got to see it, you know. I'm not about to just, you know, look at what he does on paper and go, that might work, let's put him higher. Like, from what we've seen of the character across the world and tournament, this character is not doing amazingly well. And those that we do see play him, of course, his damage is on the lower side. Again, his crushing blows are kind of hard to utilize. He has them, but again, they're not the most practical. He has decent mids, you know, so his buttons are decent, but the big thing that holds him back is low damage. He does not have a huge amount of damage output. It's all unbreakable, which is a nice plus for him, but it's unbreakable because he can't launch you at all, right? That's the biggest issue he has, is he's not unbreakable as a cool, you know, plus to him. He's unbreakable because he has no way of launching you outside of jump kicks. And even if he jump kicks, his damage is still quite meager compared to a lot of the characters. He's got long range buttons, his footsies are quite strong, his down two is incredible, but I don't know if any of those really built him up to the level of the other characters in the game. I think at the moment he is a struggle character, and until we see otherwise, that's what we're going to see. 300 damage low, I mean, that's pretty much the most he's ever going to get, so yeah, that's quite low, especially when you look at the comparison of pretty much the other characters in the game at most parts of the screen, and you look at what he has to make up for that damage. It doesn't hold a candle to what the rest of the characters have at the moment, until we see this character kind of explored more and a bit more on the competitive scene. This is where, in my opinion, the character is going to be. Kotal Kahn, I think, is almost as bad as Devorah, but not quite, which is why I've got him at the arse end of B, not C. I think Kotal Kahn needs some serious help. I think, honestly, the character, again, competitively, not successful at all, no success, low representation, and those that we do see playing him, again, are not big believers in the character. He has incredible range, but no speed at all. He has some of the slower buttons in the game, even with their range. You've got a character like Frost that has pretty much the same range as him, but faster, more confirmable, and less death on block. His grab has his command grab has a lot of recovery, so if it misses, he dies, and he does not really have the means to force respect out of people. Like, if people want to just jump the grab, they're gonna, and it's really hard for him to stop them doing it. And even if he stops them, like, his forward 1-2 has an iffy hitbox on it, so it doesn't always quite connect. If he whiffs most of his combo strings, he dies, and his combos are really iffy to the point that we see him die for dropping combos all the time. And it feels like, again, like what he's built around in the grab and these buttons, it just doesn't quite work. From what we've seen of the character so far anyway. I think he's not far from being a bit better, right? He just needs a few quality of life changes, in my opinion, like, you know, more vertical coverage of his grab, strings drop less often. It's hard to say, right? His parry as well. His parry is probably the worst parry in the game, and I don't think it's close. It's just not great. Compared to what his parry did from an MKX, it really is not the same move. But being said, he does have long range. He does have a meterless launcher. He does have decent damage. In the damage department, though, his command grab being his highest damage ender, that not only side swaps, throws them really far away, really hurts him. I don't know if you're like supposed to play from that range with him, but it doesn't seem like that's what he's supposed to do. So I think, again, Kotal Kahn, he's got some redeeming qualities, but they are far outweighed by the negatives. And until we see more from the character, or we see some changes, this is where I'm going to see Kotal Kahn. And last, but definitely least intentionally, Devorah right at the bottom in C by herself. I think she's the worst character in the game. I don't think it's even close. I think by all definitions of me putting this tier list together, I think she is the worst at all of them. Competitive results, None. When we see her in tournament representation, she is picked and loses immediately. And even if you're looking at what she is capable of on paper, it doesn't mean a thing. She has some of the absolute slowest advancing buttons in the game. 15 frame advancing, high, unsafe mix-ups. Her setup bug, obviously, like, her strongest thing about her is her setup potential with, like, you know, the big bug on the floor. Potentially her long-range game, you know, when she can shoot the bugs in the air, but her recovery is really bad on that, and against advancing specials, she dies for it. Against teleports, she dies for it. Her damage output is comically low from what we've seen so far, with the one exception being her anti-air special Crushing Blow. When she lands the anti-air special and it Crushing Blows, obviously she gets a lot of damage off it once, but again, she has to be in the corner to get the most. With Fatal Blow, she can really cash out again, but it's a one-time deal. She has to take some serious risks and do a lot of effort for quite possibly the lowest payout in the game. And again, if we're not going by what is capable on paper, which even then it's not that impressive compared to other characters, her Crushing Blows again aren't great. Her anti-air one is quite solid. She's got a counter hit one, which again can be good with punish. But thoroughly and truly the worst character in the game, in my opinion. Not to say that she can't win matches online. I'm sure you can play her, learn a thing or two, and win some online games, but you will not work harder with any character in this game for less of a reward than Devorah in her current state in this game. And for that reason, I'm chucking her down at C tier. C tier is pretty much unviable. I would say B tier is situational, but, you know, still not great. B+, I would say, has a place, but, you know, with still some drawbacks. But at the same time, like, with that in mind, like, in my heart, I want to put Kano at the bottom of A. In my heart, I want to put him there, but I know you guys won't agree with that. I know that's kind of the point. Like, in my heart, I want to put him under Frost because I firmly believe that's where he is. Again, because, like, from left to right, this is best of the tier to worst of the tier, in my opinion. I want to put him there. I really want to put him there. God, I really want to put him there. Because I really don't think he has the same problems as the rest of the characters down here. I look at him next to the other characters and I don't agree. I really don't. Because he's definitely at the bottom of that tier. I honestly think he's there. I honestly think he's there. Should I make an A- and put him there by himself? Nah, that's not necessary. Fuck it, it's my list. There we go. You know what? I feel good about that. I actually do feel good about that. You know what? That looks better to me, because most A tier should be the most populated tier. Really, A and A+ should be the most populated, in my opinion, because they're like the most competitive of the cast, I would say. You know what? I agree with that. That looks better to me. Kano above Frost. Honestly, I don't know if I think so. I think Frost has better matchups that she can counter really hard, and I think she's just a bit more solid. The big thing about Kano is Kano dies for taking risks. The biggest drawback Kano has, in my opinion, is he is a character that has to take risks to win at points in the game. You know, you're not gonna win with him. You're not gonna win with him by not taking the risks. And if you take those risks, like, he has, like, so some of Kano's tougher matchups are the characters that just straight up kill him for doing it. You know, characters that can take away 40% for hitting a button, 50% for a Crushing Blow. Those characters are very popular. You know, you've got the Sonya, the Garris, the Baraka, the Sub-Zero, like the Scorpion. The big one is Scorpion. These characters that delete life bars for standing confirms, if they've got counter hit especially, Kano has to put himself in a position that he does that. and it's a reactable, option selectable situation against some of his best options to do so. And for that reason, I think holds him back a lot. But not enough to make him anything less than, I would say, the bottom of A tier. I really think this character is good. And I feel like Combo Breaker kind of did a good job kind of showing that off. I think the character can definitely compete, for sure. Okay, guys, so now we look at it. This is pretty much the way I see the game. You know, looking at these characters, obviously, for me, this is like left to right, you know, top to bottom. I would say this is honestly the way I view the game. For any of you that may have just tuned in, I know this is obviously a long talk, so thank you very much, guys, for tuning in for this whole thing. I know I definitely didn't want to breeze through this. You know, I took my time before making a tier list. You know I've been quite vocal in the past about thinking that it has been too early at times to make them. I wanted to do this after Combo Breaker because I think from the many competitions I've seen and tournaments for this game, you know, I've been in a privileged position to play in and commentate the biggest tournaments this game has had so far. I've seen a lot of the game. I've talked to countless top-level players around the world over. And from what I've seen and what I've heard and the results we have, for me, this is the character tier list from my opinion, right? Of course, feel free to discuss this. I'm not going to be going offline. I'm going to be live for a while yet. But I really appreciate you guys sticking around with this. For those of you watching on YouTube, thank you very much for watching. Obviously, make sure to chat in the comments. Please try and be respectful about it. I know character discussions can get heated at times, but I want to start discussion with this. You know, let's talk about this and see what we think. But I'm very confident. I'm very happy with this list. I think the only person that might be perhaps a little low is I know a lot of people put Jax higher, and I also think Jax is good, but I don't know if he's quite better than these. I think maybe there's an argument to move Jax higher in the A tier, but not by much. That's the only thing I think I might make, but deep down I don't know if I would right now based on what we've seen of the character in competition. Of course that could change. This will not be the last tier list. I will be updating this. I'm thinking with each pro competition event. So for example, this is going to be the post Combo Breaker tier list. For me, you know, this is what I'm going to say it is in my opinion. I'm up to talk about it. But I think I'm going to update this after each pro competition event. Because in between each pro competition event, there's like one a month. So there's like a month in between. There's like a month in between pro competition events. So I think if we can do this updated, and now, you know, I'm going to use this as my base from that point on. It won't be as long because this is obviously from scratch. I think that's how I'm going to do it moving forward. And I think that's going to be a solid way to kind of keep up to date with where we're all as a community, all of us here. You know, obviously this is our community on Twitch and our YouTube community. You know, this is not what the whole MK community is going to think. I have no doubt there are going to be people questioning placements, and I'm happy to talk about it. But I think for us here together as a community, this is a good starting point, and I firmly believe in this right now. So thanks very much for watching, guys. I'll catch you guys on the next video. Peace out.